So, oh, so, so if I just start, it's okay. So we've done all the prayers, we've done refuge in Bodhicitta, we have done the Heart Sutra. So today, the Dharma I will talk about is the commentary on the awakening mind. So first, I would like to say the following. So when we say the commentary on the awakening mind, it is a text which, from one side, it's like it's a view. It presents the view, the Buddhist view. But actually, the main aspect of the commentary on the awakening is so it's the ultimate awakening mind and the conventional awakening mind. So by, for instance, the method of exchanging and equalizing with others. So on the basis of this technique, you generate the conventional mind. This is what's presented in this text. So in short, the two types of bodhicitta are mainly presented in this text. Therefore, when we talk about the two types of bodhicitta, so how do they come about? So it's by way of practicing the path. On the basis of practicing, then these two minds can be generated. And that being the case, therefore, when we talk about Buddhism, so about the basis, about the path, about the result, these three aspects of Buddhism, so that's like the framework of everything. And on the basis of that framework, then if we practice the true truth, when we practice the true bodhicittas, then we get a complete sense of Buddhism. So if we just look at bodhicitta itself, if we just kind of take it out of context, we won't get a whole sense. We don't get a sense of everything. Therefore, in the commentary on the awakening mind, is basically explains the two types of bodhicitta, but it's important to understand also the basis of Buddhism, and on the basis of the basis, then what is the path, and then what is the result? We need to understand. So practicing the path, what is the kind of result in terms of the two kayas that we can attain? So this we need to understand, that kind of general understanding we need to have in order to really understand the two types of bodhicitta. That being the case, so in general, when we talk about the Dharma, so if we want to know the Dharma, we are different from those people who have no faith, who don't want Dharma, who are not interested in any spiritual system. So we are those who are religious. We are religious. We're interested in the Dharma. And on that basis, or being such a person interested in the Dharma, we should have an interest in what is the Dharma. What is it that we want to practice? What is the exact Dharma? So we need to study, we need to reflect and meditate on the Dharma. What is that Dharma? What is it exactly? What is it that we need to practice? That's important to understand, and that needs to become clear to us. So why are we practicing? That's also something we need to understand. Now, when we talk about the Buddha Dharma, where does the Dharma come from? Well, it's based on the fact that we want happiness and we don't want to suffer. That's why the Dharma came into existence. And this is true, the fact that we don't want to suffer and that we want to find happiness, we want to find satisfaction. That is true for all sentient beings. So, and for any kind of living being, such as an animal, any being that has a mind, we all share this. We all share this fact that we wish to be happy and we don't want to suffer. So, so also on top of that, and on top of having this wish, we also try everything we can to eliminate suffering, to overcome problems. So until now, we've been doing this. However, up to this point, we've not been able to find this happiness. We didn't find this lasting happiness, this real happiness. It hasn't happened so far, has it? That being the case, with regard to the methods to generating happiness, either the methods we've applied so far that have been mistaken, or the methods we've applied so far have not been complete. These are the only possibilities, because so far, until this point, we've not been able to generate this lasting happiness and overcome suffering. So we need a method. It's important to have a method that lacks in nothing, that is a correct kind of method and doesn't lack in anything. So for many, many millions of years, we've been in this, we've experienced this predicament of just having problems and so forth, which is why it's now the time to make some changes. And when we talk about happiness as human beings, being living beings, so what is the kind of happiness? What is this happiness? I mean, we have this natural question, what is this happiness? Is our happiness sufficient? The kind of happiness that we do experience, is that sufficient? For us as humans, this question arises sooner or later. And that being the case, the Buddha, what did the Buddha say? So happiness can only come if we subdue our mind. If we don't subdue our mind, then we'll suffer, we'll have problems. That's what the Buddha himself has said. So when we say happiness and suffering, what is the difference? Well, the difference is based on whether we subdue our mind or not. That's what the Buddha has said. Therefore, what is the meaning of the main cause? So subduing or not subduing our mind, the main cause of happiness or suffering. This shows us that in terms of how we overcome suffering and find happiness, it's very different to the ordinary way of how we look at removing suffering and generating happiness. So, for instance, in the West, in particular, the Western countries, the modern kind of countries. So, in the West, you have a lot of gadgets, so the technical kind of progress is impressive. There's so many developments. If we compare the modern kind of world now and compare it to just a few years ago, or compared to the past, there's been an incredible change. And also the education has really advanced, has progressed greatly. But if we then, on that basis, on the basis of the external conditions having improved so much. So talking about this incredible progress, this incredible development, especially when it comes to the different gadgets, the technology, and so forth. So we can say that this is incredible what has happened in the West, also in terms of our education, in terms of all the abilities and all the possibilities we have. Actually, the happiness of people should become stronger. So, for instance, the scientific understanding and so forth. But actually, that's not the case. It's not like our suffering has really decreased despite this development, this material progress. Our happiness has not become stronger. So our happiness we haven't really found lasting happiness and satisfaction. So that being the case, therefore, what we can see is that the mental afflictions, the delusions, they have not actually decreased as a result of the material progress. So our aversion, our attachment, and so forth, none of those have really decreased. So our our greed has become stronger, and also our faith in one another, our belief in one another has decreased. So there are more people who suffer from different illnesses. Also, when it comes to our mind has not really advanced. Our mind has not really developed in a positive way. So despite this material progress, despite the incredible education people have in the West, that didn't mean that the afflictions have decreased. In fact, they've actually become stronger. We can probably say that they've increased, they've become stronger. So actually, our attitudes has decreased, or our attitude has degenerated. Our views have degenerated with regard to certain aspects. Therefore, in a lot of the modern countries, the well-advanced countries, if you look at the relationship people have with one another, those have weakened, those have degenerated in comparison to the past. So a lot of people commit suicide nowadays in the modern world, take their own life, and we harm each other. There's a lot of racism, of like distinguishing, being partial towards some, and so forth. And so in that way, yes, there are a lot more problems, like social problems, that have developed. And that being therefore the case, so it's due to the kindness of the Buddha, the kindness of the Buddha, that we now know we need to subdue our mind, that unless we subdue our mind, we'll have suffering. So this is really the basis. That's what we should think about, that happiness comes from subduing our mind. If we don't subdue our mind, then no matter what the external circumstances are, no matter how the material progress, how strong it is, how developed everything is, our problems as humans, they will continue. They will not, not only will they remain, our problems will, not only will they remain, they will become stronger. So we look at modern society, it'll become clear. If we're under the control of our afflictions, then afflictions such as aversion and attachment, ignorance, and so forth, all these different afflictions as they are described in the texts, all these different, so the root afflictions, the secondary afflictions. So there's so many different types that are described. If they get stronger, the stronger they are in our mental continuum, so then our mind will be more disrupted. So if the stronger they are in a sentient being's continuum, the stronger the confusion of that person, the unhappiness of that being. So when our mind is confused, when our mind is disrupted and disturbed, then also the people we live with, they will be affected by that. So the society we live in will be affected by our own disturbed mind. So to summarize, so we will experience loss, others will experience loss, we will be harmed, others will be harmed. So that's reality, that's how things really are. So if we now subdue our mind, so based on the science and so forth, even if the scientific progress is not great, if our education is not that great, as long as we subdue our mind, we'll experience inner peace. And not only will we more happy ourselves, but also beings around us, the beings that the other people we engage with, will they be also happier? Will be able, in terms of society, will benefit society, which means that subduing and not subduing the mind, if we really think about this, leading to happiness or leading to suffering, if we think about it, it's actually really profound. Not only is it profound, but also if we understand this, it will really benefit us. On top of that, what is it that makes, what is responsible for our mind being unsubdued? It's the afflictions. And what does it mean to have a subdued mind? Well, it means to reduce the afflictions and instead generate love, compassion, wisdom, concentration, the attitude that wishes to benefit others, and so forth. If these types of minds are increased, then our disturbed mind will be pacified. Our unsubdued mind will transform into a subdued mind. It will transform into a correct mind, a mind that is in accordance with reality. The stronger our wisdom, the stronger, the wider our attitude is. So we'll be able to think of everything. We can take, we take on a different perspective that takes in all aspects, that is not narrow-minded. Actually, this is in contradiction to society. There's so many problems actually in our society, so many conflicts. So if we usually, the problem is that we only think of our own kind of concern, of our own situation. That's the problem. We're so narrow-minded that we don't see the whole situation. In the Lama Rinpoche, for instance, says, for instance, when he talks about the perfection of wisdom in the great treatise on the stage of the path of enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa, it says, when it talks about the 6 paramitas, so especially when it talks about wisdom, the quality of the of wisdom, that we can see all virtues as non-contradictory. And also we come to realize that our society is such that we contradict each other all the time, that we only see our own kind of situation and so forth. And even within one day or even within 2 days, we see lots of contradictions. We act in a contradictory way. So one way we feel this way, and on another day we act in a different way. So there's so many contradictions in our life, in our thoughts, in our attitudes. So even though if the situation in actuality, everything makes sense when it comes to reality, there is no contradiction, but we have a lot of contradictory views. So for instance, if you talk to someone, actually, when we speak to a person today and this person we speak tomorrow, it's not the same person, because the person has changed. The person changes from day to day. So therefore, when we talk to a person yesterday, that same person changing, if we talk to them, they're different, but we don't really realize that kind of change. So we think, for instance, oh, yesterday they said such and such, so today they say something else. But we feel like this person has been lying because they're different from day to day. But that is not surprising because people do change. So we don't really think of the person itself. We just think of the words and think, oh, these two are contradictory. So our way of thinking is too narrow-minded. And it's in actuality, there is no contradiction. The person who spoke these words is not the same person. The situation has changed for them. Therefore, it's important as part of generating our wisdom to see that things are not contradictory, to understand that reality, there is no contradiction when it comes to the actual, the way phenomena exist. So actually, when we talk about God or no God, a creator God or not a creator God, actually it seems it's contradictory when we hear about this. But actually, when we think about these words, is there a creator or is there no creator? Actually, if we think about these words, so when we have these two people that some say, or two people, one there is a creator God and there's another which says there is no creator, it's actually, there's no contradiction. So So the person who says there is no creator, they have the sense, okay, I have to take responsibility for my well-being, for my suffering. So if I'm sick, I have to go to the doctor. There's no God who helps me. And so for the person who don't accept this creator God, so they really have to work hard. So even a person who believes in a creator God, they still also have to take care of themselves, because there's no God that is obviously helping them, in the sense they still have to go to the doctor. So there's not that much of a difference. Or for instance, if you have a person who plants a seed. So for instance, whether there's a God or not, but a farmer still has to plant the seed. So the action doesn't really change. So it's not like God comes down and plants the seeds and takes care of the garden. So in the end, actually, our actions don't really change. So a person who also believes in a creator God, they're not saying that God will actually do the farm work, etc. So we still need to do everything ourselves, basically. We need to plant the seed, etc. So they don't say that God will come down and do everything. So they think, for instance, if they build a house, if I need to build a house, I need someone who like an architect, or I need someone who can help me to build the house. So the world basically is our home. It's like our house, or it's our home. That's the world is actually that place. So we get food from this world, we get drinks, we get everything we need from this world. So actually, when we think about this environment, so for instance, the trees and the mountains and so forth, actually incredible, like it's much greater than what humans can make. So this beautiful world that we live in, so the sense is that there needs to be someone who's created this world. That's the idea. That's why a lot of people believe in a creator God, because like, well, unless someone built my house, I wouldn't have a house. So likewise, unless someone has designed this world, I couldn't have this world. That's the kind of basis for the belief in a creator God. So, but that's basically the logic. So the sun and the moon. So it seems like a human being, some being put them there. So for instance, so there's like a light that comes, just like we have a light in a house, just as someone installed the electrics in a house. So likewise, someone must have installed the sun and the moon. And also that someone that was there, that the distance between sun and earth are just right, not too close, not too far away. So there must have been an intelligence that basically created our environment, our world. So on that basis, people infer, they come to the conclusion there must be a God. So it kind of makes sense that in that sense we can understand why this view arises. There is some logic behind it. There's some reason behind it. So it's not that contradictory. So Rinpoche say, I'm saying that when we generate more wisdom, when we have more wisdom, then we see the situation much better, everything else around us. So this narrow-mindedness that we usually adopt, that confuses our mind and so forth, that will decrease. Therefore, to subdue our mind, if we can subdue our mind, then wisdom, patience, love, compassion, all these positive states of mind, they can arise. If on the other hand, our mind is not subdued, well, that means our afflictions control us. And when the afflictions control us, then we cannot really be peaceful. I mean, there's an immediate effect when the afflictions arise. So what the Buddha says is really profound. So taking a rebirth, for instance, being reborn, it comes because of our attachment. Due to attachment and desire, craving, etc., they are responsible for us for our birth. And on the basis of our birth, then there is aging, there's sickness and death. So once we have this body, there's nothing we can do. The suffering of aging, sickness, and death, they will arise. So once there's birth, all the other sufferings arise. Also, when we get sick, the suffering of sickness. So if you think of just this sickness in general, just having a body, so then we have the suffering of getting hungry, we have a suffering of getting cold, we have the suffering of getting dirty and so forth. So this is just natural to having this body. Once we have this body, then this will definitely happen. All the different problems, the problems of being cold, of suffering from hunger, etc. So it's just having this body. On that basis, just because we have this body. So we're not talking about anything more. We're saying that this is the basis that is responsible for all these problems of aging, etc., all these problems. So aging is so difficult, as an example. So all these sufferings, they only arise because we have this particular body. So we have to eat, we have to wear clothes, we need a house, we need a place we can stay, and so we need so much. Because of everything our body needs and all the sufferings that could arise in dependence on our body, that's why we have so many problems, where we have to work so hard. So then, of course, we have family, we have relatives, etc. On the basis of that, a lot of problems arise. And of course, we have this mind that is affected by the afflictions, a mind that is envious, a mind that is greedy, and so forth. So having this body, having this mind, therefore, there are so many problems. We have from the moment we were born, there were afflictions. And because of the afflictions, there's so many problems in our life. So the body comes because of our attachment, comes from our desire. So actually, the fact we were conceived is because of desire. Our parents having had desire, us having had desire when we died in our previous life, and so forth. So desire was very much attachment, desire were very much involved in our process of existence, of coming into existence. So therefore, it's important to remove these afflictions, to stop these afflictions. So to stop the anger, that if you can do that, then stop the attachment, stop ignorance and so forth. So this kind of uncontrolled situation, if we can eliminate that, then we won't take a rebirth again. If we don't have attachment, we won't be reborn. So not appropriating a new existence, that is what it means to be liberated. Liberation really means that there's no longer any attachment that is now responsible for us to be reborn. That is liberation. So basically, so if we don't take anything, if we just think of it as like, this is others, this body and this mind, it's not mine. So if we don't have that attitude that this is mine, then we can let go and we'll be liberated. So if we understand taking a body like this, there are only problems, then the situation is different. But right now, we don't have this freedom to say, I don't want to take on a body. Well, we have attachment. Therefore, there's no way we can actually overcome this situation right now. We cannot be without a body. So it's our own attachment that binds us to this body. Whatever we see, if it benefits us, there's attachment. If it doesn't benefit us, there's attachment to be separated from it. So in that sense, our mind always gets stuck stuck to these objects of attachment. So our mind is basically immersed in these objects, and based on these objects, based on the objects of our attachment, we continue to exist in samsara. That being the case, if we if we could overcome attachment, so attachment that is attached to certain objects. So, well, first we have to, of course, overcome our grasping at a self. If we understand, if we, for instance, think about it, so if we have attachment, if we understand that if I'm attached to this, all these problems arise, then based on overcoming self-grasping and so forth, we can actually overcome attachment and attain this freedom which is freedom from attachment, which is liberation, that state of liberation. So in the text it says that liberation is this non-appropriating. So appropriating means appropriating a body, appropriating certain things, taking over, getting attached to certain things. So to not appropriate means liberation. So once we've appropriated, so taking on this, taking on a body, taking on objects and things and so forth, then there's no limit. Of course, once we take on things anyway, we have to leave them behind at some point as well. Therefore, when we say subduing the mind, well, that's what it means. It means that we get happiness. We find happiness. So subduing the mind, subduing the affliction, subduing attachment, which then leads to liberation. So that's what the Buddha explained in terms of subduing and not subduing the mind. And this is very profound if you think about it. But looking at our present situation, so if we can reduce our self-grasping and our attachment, so the weaker our attachment, for instance, our mind will be, to that degree, our happiness will be greater. So the Kadamba Geshe say, if we have no attachment, then that's the kind of the final state, in the sense of like the greatest happiness we can experience. It's important to think about this again and again. So if we don't have this attachment, then in our mind there will be more freedom. Will there be natural mental freedom? So are based on reality, understanding reality. So if we really understand how things actually exist, that also, well, based on our reduced attachment, our understanding of reality will increase. And if we understand reality better, well, there'll be a natural increase in our well-being and our happiness. So usually when we have strong attachment, then we're basically just controlled by all our wishes. I want this, I need this, I don't want this, etc. So every time there's like, when there's strong attachment, then there's a lot of greed and there's a lot of need and a lot of attachment, in the sense that there's no sense, there's no end to it, in the sense that if we have a lot of attachment, the attachment will just get stronger. Even if we get the objects of our attachment, there'll be new objects that we desire. So there's no end to it. So it's not like if I get my object of attachment, okay, so now I'm satisfied, I got what I wanted. There's no satisfaction, there's no contentment. I'm okay, I got what I wanted. That's unfortunately not going to happen when we have attachment. There's no end. So if I have desire and I was able to fulfill my desire today, tomorrow my desire will be stronger. So there's no limit to the objects of attachment, or what we attach to, what we desire. So in the history, it talks about, for instance, like a king who's very greedy. Like if we look at in history, like very greedy kings, if they got what they wanted, were they satisfied the next day? No, they never were. They were never satisfied. So history tells us that. So therefore, it's important to reduce our attachment, our desire. It's important to reduce it, because that's the only way to find that satisfaction. So that will really lead, we analyze this, it will lead to great happiness, greater happiness. And it's only us who can do that. And actually, it's not that we control our attachment controls us. So of course we have very natural attachment. But it's important that even though we have this natural attachment right now, that we apply our wisdom when we become aware of our attachment. So attachment arises in our mind, then we have to apply wisdom. Should we follow? Should we be controlled by this attachment, or should we control our attachment? So we can make that decision. So even if we don't get, sometimes we want something really badly and we don't get it, and we're really unhappy because we didn't get it. So we need to think about this. Is it really, is that a solution to get the object, or is it more about working with our own attachment? So this is kind of the basis in terms of reducing our afflictions, subduing our mind. When we talk about subduing our mind, there are two ways to do so. There is one way to subdue our mind on the basis of wisdom, and then there's another way of subduing our mind based on faith, based on aspiration. Rinpoche says, I'm not sure it's the right word, but not applying wisdom. So there's first, of course, applying wisdom. That's one method to. So there's one way of applying wisdom, and the other way is like based on faith. And wouldn't it be nice? Like it's based on aspiration, just more on based on that kind of faith in that it's important. So on that basis, we can also subdue the mind. But it's actually, when we take these two ways of doing it, so just believing that subduing the mind is good versus really understanding it, of course, understanding it is more efficient. It's much more effective. Now, for instance, self-grasping is always with us. So we always have like a sense, I will do this, in this year we'll do this, next year we'll do that. So we're always concerned, we're always grasping onto a self. The self-grasping mind is ever present, it's always with us. Now we analyze the object. Is our view correct or not? So that which we desire, if we analyze it, will it really give us happiness? So when we reflect upon the impermanence of the object, ourselves, and so forth, if we apply wisdom in such a way, then we come to understand, then everything is actually impermanent, that nothing remains the same. So on that basis of impermanence, understanding impermanence, that can actually help us it helps to weaken our self-grasping, for instance. So this is similar to like when we switch on the light, darkness will disappear. So likewise, if we are able to apply wisdom, that will serve as an antidote. Just if we analyze things, so if we just apply analysis to, for instance, to attachment. So based on that attachment, will I find satisfaction if I get the object of attachment and so forth? If we really reflect upon that, it can serve as a powerful antidote to reducing attachment. It can reduce our affliction. So the wisdom is so important, understanding how phenomena really exist. This analysis is so precious in the sense that it gives us a very wide view and helps us to understand how the self exists and so forth. So usually we're very much obsessed with the self, they're self-grasping and so forth. But actually, when we talk about wisdom, in particular, the wisdom realizing selflessness, there's no greater wisdom. So realizing selflessness, understanding selflessness, for that, to understand selflessness, we need wisdom, the different reasonings, the different aspects that describe that. All that is very important. Anyway, so even today, when we talk about the commentary on the awakening mind, it's important to understand also selflessness. Selflessness is also explained in this text. In the beginning, it talks about selflessness. The fact that all sentient beings wish to overcome suffering, and that which overcomes suffering, what overcomes suffering is the overcoming of the attachment. So we have to overcome attachment, and we can overcome attachment. And the Buddha himself has said so. We have to overcome our attachment. That can only be done when we generate wisdom. So when we talk about the non-Buddhists, for instance, they understood they understood, even those who didn't accept a creator God, those non-Buddhist systems, they understood that our suffering comes from the afflictions, that suffering that we don't want, it comes from attachment, etc. And even those who asserted, many of them asserted a creator God, even they also asserted that suffering comes from the afflictions. And they also understood it has to do with the self. So many of the non-Buddhist systems, they analyze what is the self, because if there's no self, then there's no one who experiences happiness and suffering. So that's the conclusion they came to. So the Buddha himself, and also those systems who don't accept a creator God, or the non-Buddhist systems. So based on this view, they very much held this view that the afflictions are the main problems, and then that our afflictions come from the self. So all these systems understood that, and so the Buddha in particular talked about no self. And in this commentary on the awakening mind, we also talk about no self, and in that sense refute the non-Buddhist systems that assert a self. So for instance, a self-sufficient, substantially existent self, or as a permanent, partless, independent self, all these selves are refuted. Also that there is an external kind of, for instance, an external phenomenon that exists by way of its own character, of like phenomena, external atoms and so forth, that exist by way of their own character. Those are they are also refuted. So for instance, the Chittamatra school, they talk about there not being any external phenomena, but that the mind exists truly. So in the Madhyamika system, also that is refuted. There's no truly existent self or anything that exists truly. So all that is refuted. All phenomena are equal in that they lack true existence. So here's selflessness. When we talk about selflessness, well, this is the main topic of the commentary on the awakening mind. So based on the Madhyamika school, selflessness as it's described in the Madhyamika school, that is described here. And then at the end, it also talks about the conventional bodhicitta, how we generate bodhicitta on the basis of equalizing, exchanging self with others. So anyway, this is just a short kind of summary of what to expect. Okay, so now Rinpoche. I came from far away. I didn't even find a good commentary on the awakening mind. And so at around 5 o'clock, so I couldn't get a commentary. So a friend of mine at around 5 o'clock sent me this commentary today. So Rinpoche said, I came from far here, and so I wasn't able to find this commentary, but I got this commentary by this friend. So I'm actually going to, now I have a commentary, and based on that, I'm going to read this text now. So I will explain this text as best as I can, and I'll read through it first. So you probably all have the text, the commentary on the awakening mind. So at the beginning, it says, so if we go through the beginning. So first, to say a little bit about the kind of different sections, kind of divide up the text a little bit to give you like a rough overview. So so actually at the beginning it says like devoid of all real entities, utterly discarding all objects and subjects such as aggregates, elements, and scent fields and so forth. This is actually from the root tantra of Guhya Samaya. So this is basically the kind of the source text of the commentary on the awakening mind is this Guhya Samaja, this particular phrase when it says it has been stated devoid of all real entities, all the way to it is in the nature of emptiness. So when we talk about this particular text, so we can, what it describes is the conventional and ultimate bodhicitta. So there are some verses that describe these different types, so the conventional bodhicitta and the ultimate bodhicitta. So there are different kind of quotes in here. So what is the actual text? So this is by Nagarjuna, this text. It's known that this is, well, whether Nagarjuna really taught this text or not, it's a very precious text. It's a very, the well-qualified or the really great text. So the text actually starts with bowing to the glorious Vajra holder, so the first verse. So it contains the homage, paying homage, and the promise to compose the text. So these are really the words from Nagarjuna himself, bowing to the glorious Vajra holder who embodies the awakening mind. So and then the second verse, then the Buddha maintains the awakening mind to not be obscured by such conceptions, etc. That describes the ultimate, describes the ultimate bodhicitta. So that's what ultimate bodhicitta is. That's the entity of ultimate bodhicitta. That's what the second verse describes. And the third verse, it is with a mind moistened by compassion that you must cultivate awakening mind with effort, and so forth. This third verse, it describes the conventional, it seems it describes the conventional bodhicitta. Rinpoche says he hasn't looked at the commentary yet, but it seems that's what it describes. Because the main subject matter of this text are the two types of bodhicitta. So this is kind of almost like a summary. So for instance, the ornament for clear realizations, it describes the different aspects, the 72 aspects, etc. So this is similar in the beginning of the ornament for clear realization. You find kind of a summary of the different aspects or of the different topics that will be described in this text. So likewise here, the 70 aspects are described in the ornament for clear realization and so forth, the 8 realizations, etc. But anyway, so here likewise you have a summary at the beginning of this text, and in the fourth verse it says, so first we had this quote. We had this quote coming from the Samaja when it says devoid of all real entities and so forth. Then in verse 4, the extremists, the non-Buddhist extremist views, they are the views by the extremists or the non-Buddhist philosophers, they are refuted. So that goes all the way until to verse 10, verse 9, and verse 10 all the way up to verse 21. So you can divide them up into four verses. So actually, so in the original Sanskrit, actually, this is always, it can always be divided into 4 lines. So you have verses of 4 lines, but there seems to be one line missing. So not so much in terms of the, it doesn't seem to be really missing, but in the sense that there, in one verse you have 5 lines, but in another line, in another verse you have 3 lines. So actually, it seems like maybe there's something missing or something is a little bit odd, because in one line you have to add this one line to one verse, so you have 5 lines. So anyway, Rinpoche says he's not sure is there like an omission or not. Anyway, so from verse 10 to verse 21, so that describes the Sautantrika view and the Vaibhashika view, for instance, that assert external existence. So in particular, the Sautantrika view that talks about phenomena existing externally. So they actually that view is then from verse 10 to 21. So you have the Sautantrika and Vaibhashika view. That is refuted. So this is now the Chittamatra view. So in order to refute the Chittamatra view, they has to be first presented. So verse 10 to 21, they present the Chittamatra view, which refutes the Vaibhashika and the Sautrantrika that assert that the phenomena exist externally. So I just want to give you like a rough overview of this text. So, but maybe I'm wrong about this. So Rinpoche says I have to look at this text again, but I can always make adjustments later on. So I just give you a sense now. This is what I think the text means, but once I get more into it, I may have to make adjustments and tell you, oh, I was wrong. Oh, so then, so anyway, so first, then all the way from 22 to 47, then these verses, they refute the Chittamatra school. Actually has 112 verses. This is a long text, actually. But, sorry. So it's from 22 to 42 that the Chittamatra system is refuted. And then from verse 43, the system of the Madhyamika is presented. So our own system. So that there is no inherent generation, there's no inherent growing, there's no inherent arising, etc. All this is asserted. All this is explained. Until verse 56. So the last words. So the last line of 56 and the first line of 57. So the two extremes here are overcome or are refuted. So Rinpoche may have a different way of counting the verses. Okay, so sorry, here the numbering is a little different, but anyway, Rinpoche, so it's 58, it says. I think it's 58 in the version we have. So one speaks of emptiness and so forth. So the two types of extremes are eliminated. Then so 61. So in our case, it's 62. So how will we be born in samsara? How do we exist in samsara? That is explained. That is in our case, verse 62. Then so from 62 until 68. So Rinpoche says 67, but it's a little different. So here it talks about emptiness. It talks about karma, how karma works, and what are the true truths. What are these two truths? They are described. So how do they exist? How do the two truths exist? That is explained. Are they one of one nature? Are they different natures? That is explained. Then 69 Rinpoche says, but it's actually 70. It describes how does samsara come into existence? How is liberation attained? So these two aspects are explained: liberation and samsara. Then, so how do these two come about? Not just that. Understanding that emptiness is the only way to overcome samsara. So we can overcome samsara only if we understand emptiness. So without an understanding of emptiness, we won't be able to overcome samsara. Then verses 71 or 72, probably in our case. It describes conventional bodhicitta. So especially bodhicitta based on the technique of equalizing and changing self with others. So it's very clearly explained here. So it's in our case, it's 74 until 85, Rinpoche says. Well, it's a little bit more in our case. Then from verse 88 onwards, probably, in our text. So understanding that that Bodhicitta is so incredible. So that's 87 here. It's amazing and so forth. It's talking about how Bodhicitta is so incredible. So that on the basis of the mind realizing selflessness, that we can overcome the afflictions, but that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that a practitioner will overcome samsara. Well, they will continue to be reborn in samsara for the benefit of sentient beings. So this is what 86 Rinpoche says until 89 described, though that's different in our case. It's 89. In our case, it starts in verse 89. It talks about bodhisattvas taking on samsara, remaining in samsara for the benefit of sentient beings. And then also the reason for that is given. So maybe until 92, Rinpoche says. Then in verse 93, it talks about, so once we generate bodhicitta, we aspire to Buddhahood. Actually, there are two types of goals. Of course, there's liberation and there's Buddhahood. But is it a final vehicle or not? So if someone says it's actually not true that there are two final vehicles. So there's not, so in 93, Rinpoche says that's what it says, but it's different here in our case. But anyway, so in the verses that follow, they say that this is only interpretative, that there are two final vehicles, because there's only one final vehicle actually. So it's important to understand that just overcoming the afflictions, that is not a final kind of goal. It's not a final aim. There's a final game, there's a different final aim, which is Buddhahood. So that is explained in the following verses. Then verses 96, this is different in our case. So if there's only one final vehicle, one final aim, why did the Buddha talk about two aims? So then it explains, I'm sorry, now the verses are so different, but anyway, so around 90, 95, etc., 96, 97, Nagarjuna gives the reason for why did the Buddha teach also the vehicle of liberation? Why did he describe it as if it were a final vehicle, like a final goal? The reason is given. So this is just said, actually there's just one final vehicle. There's only one final goal, which is Buddhahood. But there was a reason why the Buddha fought another vehicle, and that's described here. So the greatest, so around the end of 90, 100, 102, and so forth, around there, there's an explanation about the fact that the bodhisattva aim, that is the real aim. That's what we should be aiming to. That's the final kind of vehicle that takes us to Buddhahood. And this is described. And so on the basis of that, a practitioner reaches the state of non-abidance, not abiding in samsara and not abiding in nirvana, so the state of Buddhahood. And it also describes the incredible qualities of a bodhisattva. And then at the very end, you have a verse of dedication, and that's the end of it. That's the end of this particular text. So to give you like this overview. So these 111, so 111 verses here. This is basically, so then there's a 112th here in our case. But anyway, so I may have made some mistakes in terms of the way I divided this text, but I can adjust that when I continue to teach. Is it a little bit clear? I hope it's not too much, that I don't confuse you. Is it clear enough?
Yeah.
So now that was just a quick overview, and now to explain you in detail, to go through the tale. So Sanskrit title, Bodhicitta Vivarana. Then the Tibetan title is Chanju Semgitawa, or an English commentary on the awakening mind. And then it says homage to glorious Vajrasattva. So the root source, the root sutra here, or the root text coming from the Buddha is a tantric text, so a root tantra. So it has a great connection to the tantric literature, which is why here homage is paid to glorious Vajrasattva. So if it's based on a sutric text, if the source text of a particular treatise is a sutra, then we pay homage, for instance, to the Buddha, we take refuge to the Buddha and so forth. But when it's a text that is based on Tantra, or the source text, which is Tantra, then we talk about Vajrasattva or Vajradhara. So just here it's so Vajradhara, or here in this case Vajrasattva. So here glorious so in the Guhya Samaja there's a lot of explanation for the word glorious. What is the meaning of glorious? Excellent, it's excellent. There's these different qualities of being excellent. So Rinpoche says here, Dorje Sempa, he translates it as Vajradhara. So anyway, but glorious. So what is Vajradhara? Here, Dorje or Vajra means it's this inseparability of method and wisdom, and also the inseparability of body and speech. So anyway, this inseparability of the true truth, of the two bodies and so forth, that's unique in the tantric system. So the subtle clear light mind is in the nature of the body, and the body is in the nature of that mind. So this inseparability is very unique to the tantric system. So the body, speech, and mind being inseparable. So the clear light mind is the mind, and then the subtle winds on which the clear light mind rides, that is the body. And then so the actual radiance, or the actual sound of these two, the clear light mind and the subtle wind, that is the speech. And so body, speech, and mind, in that case, they're inseparable, and that is Vajradhara. Anyway, so it says, it has been stated, devoid of all real entities. So here, entities, what is entities? When you say entities, it doesn't mean the self. Here, it refers to like substances. Usually it refers to things. It doesn't really mean the self. However, but in Sanskrit, sometimes entities, it can also mean the self. It can refer to the self based on the Sanskrit. So the nature of something, the self. So anyway, this mind, this inseparability of this mind. So what is this this inseparability of body, speech, and mind when it comes to the Tantra? So this is devoid of all real entities. So here, external phenomena, external kind of self. So it's devoid of all real entities, utterly discarding all objects and subjects. So when we here talk about the external existence, so here it refutes the external existence. So there's no external independent kind of existence, external existence, and such as aggregates, elements, and sense fields. So this is based on the Chittamatra, the view that the subject and objects are not different substantial entities. So it's based on that view. So because objects and subjects are not different substantial entities, therefore mind must be truly existent. But this will be also, this Chittamatra view is also refuted here. So when we say consciousness doesn't exist inherently, doesn't exist truly. So due to the sameness of selflessness of all phenomena, so it doesn't matter, whatever exists, all phenomena, so whether external or internal, they are free from a self. So whether it's the I or that which belongs to the I, all of these are selfless. They don't exist inherently. They don't exist truly. There's not a speck of true existence to all these phenomena. So it all has to do with the mind. So all phenomena depend on the mind. So it says in the text that the world has arisen from the mind. But basically, do phenomena exist truly or not? Well, if someone has that question, when we analyze that, well, that the basis for that is the mind. It's mainly the mind that analyzes this. But even the mind is primordially unborn. It doesn't exist inherently. So therefore, everything is in the nature of emptiness. This is what these words say. So this is what this is what it has been stated. It says it has been stated at the end of this verse in Tibetan, and it says this is what's been stated in the Guhya Samaja Root Tantra. So Nagarjuna quoted this from the Guhya Samaja Tantra, and then follows. So all teachings of the Buddha, all the teachings of the Buddha can be included in the two types of bodhicitta. Everything can be included in bodhicitta, the two types of bodhicitta, or in bodhicitta and the mind realizing emptiness. Everything can be included in these two, because as long as we're in samsara, what are the main causes for us to be in samsara? Well, the main causes are the root ignorance, the root misconception that perceives an inherently existent self, plus our self-centered attitude, our self-cherishing mind. Those are the main causes for all our troubles. So we have so many problems, so many difficulties. The main causes of these two are our self-cherishing mind or our root misconception of reality. And what is the opposite to that? Well, the opposite, or what is the antidote to those two? It's the mind realizing emptiness and bodhicitta. So these are kind of the main aspects of Buddhist practice. Just as the Blessed One and the great Bodhisattva have generated the mind of awakening, I too shall from now on until I reach. So it's kind of like the ritual we go through to generate the mind of enlightenment. I too shall from now on until I arrive at the heart of awakening generate the awakening mind in order that I may save those who are not saved, free those who are not free, relieve those who are not relieved, and help thoroughly transcend sorrow those who have not thoroughly transcended sorrow. So this is the way to generate. This is the way to think to generate bodhicitta, conventional bodhicitta. So then it goes on to say those bodhisattvas who practice by means of the secret mantra and so forth. So those who have generated bodhicitta, so those bodhisattvas who practice by means of the secret mantra, after having generated awakening and so forth, so actually basically generating the mind that focuses on all sentient beings without differentiating. So not differentiating between sentient beings, but so generating a kind of compassion that is all-encompassing, that kind of compassion that is impartial, that is unconditional, and so forth. So may I be able to liberate all sentient beings who've not been liberated. So free those who are not free, relieve those who are not relieved, and help thoroughly transcend sorrow. So basically here there are four aspects: saving, freeing, relieving, and helping to transcend. So this is based on the Sanskrit word. So may I save sentient beings who are not saved. This is based on particular Indian sources, Indian Buddhist source texts. So when we talk about the two obstructions, afflictive and cognitive obstructions, so all these who are not saved from the two obstructions, may I be able to save them. So this is what the saving here refers to. Then freeing those who are not free. Here, what is it not being free from? What is not free from? Page. It's probably ignorance. So those who are under the control of ignorance, who are not free I will free them from the darkness of, or the fold of ignorance. Then relieve those who are not relieved, or literally in Tibetan it actually says, giving those breath who can't breathe, helping those to breathe who can't breathe. So relieving those who are not relieved means to lead those who are not liberated to liberation. So there's so many. So I have them to breathe so they can overcome the afflictions. So to lead them to the lasting happiness, that's the relief here, and help thoroughly transcend sorrow, those who have not thoroughly transcended sorrow. So for instance, when we talk about a bodhisattva, for instance, so let's mainly talk about a bodhisattva. So we talk about the goal of Buddhahood. Buddhahood is the state where you don't abide, you abide in neither liberation or nirvana and samsara. You don't remain in either of these two states, liberation, nirvana, nor samsara. So bodhisattvas, that's their goal. They want to overcome the cognitive obstructions as their main goal. So the imprints from the afflictions, that's their goal, to overcome these obstructions. Likewise, so bodhisattvas, that's what they aim for. They aim for overcoming the cognitive obstructions. So their goal is not just the hero liberation, or the solitary realizes liberation. So actually that kind of liberation is an extreme. It's the extreme. It's the nirvana. It's the kind of nihilistic nirvana. So bodhisattvas, they overcome samsara. Of course, they also overcome samsara in the sense of this uncontrolled samsara. They do overcome that. So they actually overcome, they want to reach that state of Buddhahood, which is free from the extreme of nirvana, which is the extreme of nihilism in the sense of overcoming samsara, but they also want to overcome uncontrolled samsara. So these two, they want to overcome samsara and nirvana. These are seen as extremes, and this is what is thoroughly, so thoroughly transcend sorrow here refers to attaining that state of Buddhahood. So to help those who have not attained Buddhahood to attain Buddhahood. That's kind of like a promise. And then those bodhisattvas who practice by means of the secret mantra, after having generated awakening mind in terms of its conventional aspect in the form of an aspiration, so having generated the conventional bodhicitta, must then produce the ultimate awakening mind. So they have to meditate now on the ultimate mind, on the ultimate bodhicitta. So how do we generate it? Well, through meditation. So I shall therefore explain its nature. I must then produce the ultimate awakening through the force of meditative practice. I shall therefore explain its nature. That's kind of an introduction to the actual text. And then the actual text, the actual commentary on the awakening mind starts with verse 1. So it starts with the verse of homage and the promise to compose the text, bowing to the glorious Vajra holder who embodies the awakening mind. So here the awakening mind is the two. So so he's kind of the one who embodies the two minds, the two minds of bodhicitta, who embodies compassion. So who lives compassion. He is the entity of bodhicitta. He's an entity of that. He's like inseparable from. So tsuba kind of means in Tibetan means like kind of is immersed in the two minds of bodhicitta, is immersed in compassion, kind of an embodiment of those. So it's that entity that lives these two. So therefore the Buddha's mind is really the entity of the method and wisdom. So method, compassion, and wisdom, the realization of emptiness, of the ultimate nature of all phenomena. So it's the ultimate mind. So it's really the two types of mind are combined in the Buddha's mental continuum. I shall explain here the meditative practice of awakening mind that destroys cyclic existence. Anyway, there are different ways of explaining this, also when it comes to the awakening mind, etc. But so they're like great excellences. And so why is he a Vajra holder? So why here it's Vajradhara? Because he holds in its hand he holds the Vajra. So being an entity that is inseparable when it comes to body, speech, and mind. Body, speech, and mind being inseparable. So bowing to the glorious Vajra, holding on body is the awakening mind. And then the promise to compose the text. So there's the spelling in the Tibetan, which doesn't concern us. So I shall explain here the meditative practice of awakening mind that destroys cyclic existence. So I will describe the two types of awakening mind, the two types of bodhicitta, the mind that is able to overcome the extremes of samsara and the extreme of nirvana. So nirvana here, nirvana that is attained for one's own benefit, not for the benefit of all sentient beings. So these types of bodhicittas that overcome these two extremes of nirvana and samsara, that's what I will explain here. That's the promise I'm making here. This is what I will explain. So should we leave it then? So I was told not to to go for too long. So I will leave it. I'm thirsty. I want to leave it at that because I'm thirsty. So if there are questions, so if you have any questions. Do you have any questions?
Ask question? No. Do they have question?
Yeah, I was just saying that the numbering of the verses is confusing because we seem to have different texts. So it would be nice to get us all on the same text.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, how can we do that if the numbering is different? What is better to do in this case? Could I talk to Rinpoche directly? Can I? Rinpoche 구도해? Rinpoche 디체나 다나 칼리클링이 Rinpoche 냠도 양갸치 당예기 슝디 tos 카가레 안기 된수 tos 로가 인사 양 Rinpoche 칼리클리 지 yana voice message gyuningla 양갸치 소나 양 디네치 당당가 카가dos 차샤라 가서 Rinpoche 굽주 고투 손도 간절라 굽주 곱게도 차샤라 어디인사 안기 디단dos 카가레 다 칼리클리 지 Rinpoche ngala voice message gyuni WhatsApp gyuni jingala 당나나 간데 yana Rinpoche 두수여나 Okay, so I just asked Rinpoche, I described the situation that the numbering was different, and I suggested Rinpoche could maybe give me the overview once again via WhatsApp, like using voice messages, and then I can make the adjustments and later on present it to you, if that's acceptable. That's okay. And so Rinpoche said, yeah, he could do that.
It'd be good if we make sure that we all have the same, because even if you make adjustments, if we have texts that have different numbering, it still won't make sense.
Yes, okay. Of course, you're right. Yeah, I'll talk to Rinpoche about that. I'll send a message.
One version that has 110, another version by the same translator that has, I think, 111, and yeah.
Okay. I'm going to send Rinpoche my text. I put English and Tibetan together. I'll send Rinpoche my text and ask him whether it's okay. And maybe it can be done this way, that the numbers are adjusted in this way. I put Tibetan and English together, each verse. So I'll see. 자, Rinpoche 구이나? No, 단단 가랑 강 여바디 Rinpoche 퓨샤 나가 퓨이다 인지 퓨인지 베나 숄라가 탕보들라 퓨인지 여르 숄라가 니바 퓨인지 니제 여르 Rinpoche 퓨 초르제 니 Rinpoche 직신나나?
Okay.
No, точно. No. Okay.
단다 디리샤 라와라 유버티
What I have, the text I have here, has 111 verses. So these 111 verses. So where does it start? Semgi dani ko ya. Jangi dongba. So Rinpoche is saying that Rinpoche has his verse starts with bowing to the glorious Vajra holder, like verse 1 in our case, and then it goes all the way to verse 111. Rinpoche nganzula sholega gyata junior. Nganzu shungdi nana sholega. I'm not sure Rinpoche can hear me. Rinpoche gyata juni nganzula sholega gyata junior. No. So that's why we probably got confused. We got confused based on that. Rinpoche says that Rinpoche has 111, we have 112. So maybe the way the verses were divided. So I asked Rinpoche whether I can offer the text we have, and Rinpoche agreed. So he'll have a look. He has a Tibetan, he can compare it. And then that way maybe we can make the necessary adjustments in the sense, have the same verses, the same verse numbers.
The four aspects: saving, freeing, relieving, and fourth. And then I wonder what the fourth is. And then are these the four aspects of all-encompassing compassion? I wasn't sure what they were the four aspects of.
Rinpoche, can you Rinpoche bude no se tanda diyor semjima dewanam dewadang ane matrawanam trawa umachumanam ujungadang yonsin nangle mademanam yonsin nangle dawiche on di sholega di shi tanda dezi shi sorushora on dinsu shi kare yime tanda sebu chamason habadu tanda umachumanam ujungwa ade tamadi mare yonsin nangle madewa nam yonsin nangle dawa di tanda pe sebu chayo mare 디치 양자직 세부나로 송루시다 시바디기 세부 송루시 아니 컨디션 니바디 가르스나 디탄다 넘버 탐질라 캬베 닌지던 데와 여러베 같이 코 넘버 탐질라 캬베 닌지도 지 코랑 단다 단이 베지 체네라 디시디 아니 딘두베 닌지던 데와 여러베 뭐 딱딱 고추민도 디 간데던 데와 여러 지단 디시디 카레카레 이메 세부 고추민도 디레샤 So these four. So first, I made those. So it's probably in one of Chonglam in one of Lama Tsongkhapa's texts. So may I save those who are not saved. So this explanation. So here talks about the two obstructions. So may I be able to save those from the two obstructions? So what is it that one is being saved from? The two obstructions. That's the first one. That's the first one. The second one is free those who are not free. So what is it that one is not free from? So it's ignorance. It's the confusing mind, or the confusion of ignorance, the misconception. So being controlled by ignorance. So here, freeing beings from being controlled by the self-grasping ignorance. That's the second one. Then the third one, relieving those who are not relieved. Here, what is the relief? So not being able to breathe, basically. So it's the three types of suffering. So the three types of sufferings, the sufferings here, not being able to breathe. So not being relieved, the three types of sufferings. That's also one type of relieving. So, okay, so that's the third type. And the fourth type, and how thoroughly transcend sorrow, those who have not thoroughly transcended sorrow. What is the transcended sorrow here? it's the true extremes of samsara and nirvana. So that's Buddhahood. So, well, the third, sorry, it's transcended. So the sorrow here is the true extreme, the state of not having reached Buddhahood. So abiding in the extremes of samsara and nirvana. So we are in samsara. We are controlled by our afflictions. We are part of the extreme of, or we abide in the extreme of samsara. And then those who attain self-liberation, they exist in the extreme of nirvana. So Buddhahood, that's the state we want to reach. So to thoroughly transcend sorrow means to attain Buddhahood. So I talked about Buddhahood here, the state of transcending the true extremes of nirvana and samsara. So what is the sorrow here? Sorrow here are the two extremes of samsara and nirvana, and thoroughly transcending that is not abiding in the two extremes, which is another word for saying Buddhahood. So here, Bodhisattvas are still, or even Buddhas still remain in samsara, but it's samsara, it's a controlled samsara. It's samsara that they remain in purposely. So that has all connection with compassion. This is all connected to compassion here. So in that sense, as you asked, as Venerable asked, so this is all connected to bodhicitta, so to compassion, all-encompassing compassion. Oh, I made a mistake. I thought it was I thought I had to stop at 8, but it's 8:30 when I have to stop. So I got a little confused with the timing. I thought I was going for too long. So we still have time. Oh, it doesn't matter. So if you have other questions, you're welcome to ask. So if you don't have questions, then I'll continue. So with a little bit of time, I want to clarify this verse. So the first verse, so the verse of homage and the promise to propose the text. So in English, so in English, it's one verse. Can you please tell Rinpoche it's one verse? It says. Okay, I'm going to send the text. Venerable Lamsal, I'm going to send you the text I have. Okay, Venerable Tubden Lamsal, I just sent you the text I have. Oh, so please show the second verse. Please, can you show the second verse? Verse number 2. So here's the same. Rinpoche says verse 1 and 2. Can you please let Rinpoche know later on? Rinpoche Kudwe, can you please switch? Can you? I want to talk to Rinpoche directly. Rinpoche Kudwe. Gonema tama chikpare. Gonema dos kagada uchar. Gonema chikpare. Pechi sholaga tangbu chu nishu densu chikpare. Da gonema dos kebada isar. Ni Rinpoche deshi yondu tsambala.
Los.
Ni danda Rinpoche. Je ngaya je kutsu mundu. Ni Rinpoche danda di chogura. Di tsane. Ni Rinpoche lo pyugu WhatsApp gyunu pyushane. Rinpoche chik sinana. Peche di parala changa gyabdan dos mindaro chaisar. Sholaga chik changa gyabdan mindaro ina. Danda gishi tuptin jimba shishane. Danda changa gyara. Ani yada sholaga gyata juni yoba inza yang dos kagada ore. Kadu yunu sholaga shishi, tsigang shishi gyangyan re. Yang di wodela chigla tsigang ngache. Chigdela tsigang summa tu meba che. O dushene chik digdan dos mindaro chaisar. So Rinpoche says maybe some words are missing in the version Rinpoche has. So that's why I suggested to Rinpoche, I'll send him the text right after the session. I'll send it to Rinpoche and then he can look through it. I think just the way Geshe Thupten Jimbala divided the verses may be different. And as Rinpoche just suggested, there may also be missing something in his text. Some words may be missing. So anyway, after the session, Rinpoche has the chance to compare the two texts. Okay, what happened?
Thank you. Oh, it's me. Sorry. Thank you for the teachings, Rinpoche. I have a limited view of how the Nagarjuna is held in the Tibetan tradition. Who is he considered in the Tibetan tradition? And just some context, where does this text fit in kind of the Tibetan view of the path? Is it a text that people use a lot or look to a lot? Just some context for me would be helpful. Thank you.
Can we code?
Ale
Khotanda sonya di sungudura jidang Rinpoche di kola dos chik songro na gombulu du susu yime jidang pyogi nangchu dan dene yang susu yime di tanda sebu chayo mare ani digalan tanda shung di chanchu semde di ani kechulu kandu yime ani chi ta pesha chi pesam chingin do wala yana di kechimbu chagi yodame ta jidang da khalorda ta inji kila chi khalorda gyapcho dawishla sigra ta gyapcho lamna chi shung ra mai bache sungma podi sure shung keche lu khara yime odi kolaram bache tos deshikyo naron
다 ngune china
so but actually Rinpoche says
nangyun dishi jaw digangla pen
so when we explain this text when we talk about certain when we speak about the certain texts, we actually talk about the author first. There's a custom to do it, a tradition to do so. So I was thinking about this, but then I thought, okay, it's we know about Nagarjuna. Everyone knows about Nagarjuna. So also in the big monasteries, we don't really speak about the biographies and so forth because they can be read in private. So that's just the kind of habit, which is why I did think about talking about Nagarjuna, but then dismissed it because I thought it's not necessary. But anyway, how important this text is, well, actually based on the kind of short summary I gave, it should become obvious how important this text is. So the two types of bodhicitta here being so important. So from that point of view, they're so important. So therefore we can say the subject matter is so important, but the way it is presented, it'll become clearer how it is presented, how the two types of awakening mind, how they're presented. So how we should reflect on it, like how we should apply this subject matter. There's so many beautiful explanations you'll find that are very beneficial. So you'll find out how you'll find out as we go through the text. But in general, as Buddhists, as those who practice bodhicitta, so we need to practice this. It's important to practice this text. So how should we think? How should we practice? So if it's really benefit, so I think it's really beneficial to practicing the mind of awakening, to practice bodhicitta. There's so many different explanations given that will inspire us to practice effectively. So in this sense, this text is extremely important. So what Nagarjuna, regarding Nagarjuna, so there are different explanations. So for instance, when you take the Tibetan lineage or the Chinese lineage, so in those two lineages, Nagarjuna is extremely important. In general, we say Nagarjuna. So after Buddha taught the Dharma, then the Dharma went to Sri Lanka and different countries. It was spread to different countries. So in particular, the Vinaya tradition was taken. So the Pali tradition very much spread to different countries. So this is how the Dharma spread basically in Asia. So based on the three trainings, the three baskets, if you like, or the three collections, the Vinaya, the Abhidharma, and the Sutra collections. But then actually the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, they were spread based on Nagarjuna's efforts. So the different texts, the collection of reasonings, the 6 collections of reasonings that Nagarjuna composed, for instance, they explained the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, so they spread very much. Based on the explanation Nagarjuna gave, then the understanding of Bodhicitta and so forth, that spread widely. So Nagarjuna was like a pioneer in that sense. So the lineage that you find in Tibet and the lineage you find in China, which is described as the Mahayana, or the universal vehicle. So this is because of Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna, he came in the 1st or 2nd century. So at that time, Nagarjuna, he was born after the Buddha, so in the 1st or 2nd century. So at that time, he basically spread the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. So he was a trailblazer in that sense. He was a pioneer. So the different teachings that were available in India, a lot of them degenerated. A lot of degenerations took place. Some teachings got lost, or they were brought to different places and so forth. So after the Buddha's death, after the Buddha's passing away, or his parinirvana, after 400 years, so it was like in the 1st or 2nd century that according to Rinpoche's explanation, before Christ, so BC, Nagarjuna was born, and he basically reintroduced these teachings on the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, on Bodhicitta and so forth. He kind of clarified all these teachings. So he's considered to be so extremely important in terms of what he'd done, being such a pioneer in that sense. So when we say the universal vehicle, I don't know how you use this word, like whether you say Mahayana or universal vehicle, whatever you use. So it's basically the root. He established the root of the universal vehicle. He reintroduced this and made it available. Does that? Yeah.
Okay, now finish. No question.
No more. Oh.
So Rinpoche, this is a kind of a random question, but I don't fully understand why, in order to realize emptiness directly, you must first choose a vehicle, whether that's arhatship or the bodhisattva vehicle. Can you explain that?
잠시 고대. 코랑기 건디슈 디디레 뭐 고모츠야 디 단다 갑두랑단 저와요 말에 슝디단 저와요 말에 이는 뭐 건디슈야 디 가르스나 또는 원숨도 또 와라 당보 람질러 주고 그래서 야나 년주길라 년랑길람로 주고 그다 대민길람로 주고 그래서라 야나 태신길람로 주고 그래서 디 금생 가르레스 다 지금 당보 수수 타 재고 그래 수수 다 칼로르데 인지길라 직소리슬람나다 미유디 야나 아니 타르바체 야나 탐제 겸 공부하더라 디니 카노 담가 체고래 담가 체자베 제델라 야나 겐중기 삼파케 고래 야나 장주 셈케 투 케고르스 디니 티칭길람로 주 아니 시내 도닝오스도 또 투르스 가르체네 네바도 야나 겐중기 삼파 야나 장주기 셈케 고라 도닝오스도 또 와라 다스 도닝오스도 또 못해 금생 가르스 So let me see, understood the question, yes. So if there were other choices, we could choose, so there could be other choices theoretically. So it's, if there were, but there aren't. In reality, there are only these 2 choices. So there's only 2 choices. So either, first of all, there's only samsara and overcoming. So in general, on the basis is either we stay in samsara or we don't. So those are the 2 choices. That's just from a worldly point of view. So then when we overcome samsara, so here we're saying overcoming, going beyond samsara. So there's only liberation. If we talk about overcoming samsara, there are two choices: either only liberation or Buddhahood. There's only just two. That's in actuality, there's no other choice. There's nothing more. So we just want to overcome samsara. So that's renunciation. So wanting to overcome samsara, that's our situation right now. So wanting to overcome our situation right now, that's renunciation, the aspiration to do so. So I want to go somewhere else. I want to reach a different state. So I want to overcome samsara. I want to overcome my afflictions. So if I'm saying just I want to overcome affliction, that's liberation, that's nirvana. If that's all we want, then that's the fundamental vehicle liberation. It's the self-liberation of a hero and a solitary realizer. Now that's one goal. But if I don't choose that, because I understand my relationship between myself and others, so I'm very much connected to other sentient beings. I'm interconnected with everyone else, and based on that understanding, so I have to rely on other sentient beings. So if I, based on that understanding, I feel, okay, so this goal is too narrow. I want to just become liberated, but if I only become liberated, that's very narrow and I can't benefit others most effectively. So instead, I want to become a Buddha. So that's how we get to aspiring towards Buddhahood. Therefore, to realize emptiness, so there needs to be certain goals. There need to be certain goals why I want to realize emptiness. Why would I want otherwise realize emptiness? Those are the true reasons. So there's only these two choices. Rinpoche, Gonda, Rinpoche, can you please let me speak to Rinpoche? Rinpoche? Oh, 그런 투바베제한 디 메드로삼 그두라. 다 또닝 무슨 또 또알라 당봉인 중기 삼바 가르시네 끼어버려. 근데 샘게 가르시네 당볼 끼어버렸어. 다스 디기 미유 마소나야. 다 또닝 무슨 또 나 끼월라 도시 디시르샤네. 아니 또닝 무슨 또 또알라 가르시네. I'm not sure. I kind of interpreted the question. I hope it's okay. I said, why in the first place do I have to generate renunciation or bodhicitta to realize emptiness directly? Why could I not just choose, oh, it'd be so great to realize emptiness directly, make an effort and then realize it? So I'm not sure this is in the interest of the person asking the question. So Rinpoche asks, Rinpoche answers, so to realize emptiness directly, so what is the main method? The main method is the wisdom or the union of calm abiding and special insight. Without a union of calm abiding and special insight, generating that kind of mind, we cannot realize emptiness directly. So to work so hard to generate that mind, to develop that mind, we have to have an aspiration, we have to have a certain wish. So it takes such a long time. It's so difficult. So why am I doing this? So just realizing emptiness, not talking about the direct realization of emptiness. I need to have an interest in emptiness. Why do I have an interest? Why do I want to know about emptiness? Because I understand my afflictions are a problem. I understand that that my aversion, my attachment, and so forth, they're a problem. So how can these afflictions give rise to suffering? How do they harm me? So to understand that all my afflictions, all my suffering comes from the afflictions, and the afflictions come from my self-grasping mind. So then I need to analyze what is wrong with the self-grasping mind. So based on that fold-up understanding, it's a wrong mind, I can come to understand selflessness. Therefore, so the better my understanding of selflessness, the more I'm able to understand that self-grasping is a poison, that all my problems, they come from the self-grasping mind. So it's like the main poison that's responsible for all my difficulties. So to give an example, when, for instance, so if there's always someone who causes a lot of trouble, so in my whole life, they always steal stuff from me, they rob me of things, they torture my parents, my father, my mother, my children. If there's someone who always tortures me, always gives me difficulty, always troubles me, So then, so this person, so then I'm wondering, is there someone behind this person? Is there someone who tells this person to torture me? So this person I understand it's not this person who's actually directly coming into my home and beating my parents and so forth. That's not the main perpetrator. The main perpetrator is this person behind this perpetrator. So then I understand, oh, this is what I need to focus on. Not the person who directly harms me, but the person who controls the whole situation. So similarly here, the afflictions, they directly cause me problem, but the main cause, the root cause is this misconception. So after I understand the afflictions, how harmful they are, then I look at the root cause. What is it? They're the main perpetrator. They're that which really causes me all my problems, etc. And everything, all my trouble, everything comes from that. So this is why I understand this self-grasping mind. That's what I need to overcome. That's what I need to remove. I come to understand that, and that I can only overcome if I realize selflessness, if I realize emptiness directly. Only then. So then I can remove the self-grasping mind. I can remove ignorance, and in that way I can remove all the other afflictions. So based on that understanding, then we want to overcome. Then when we generate renunciation, which is the wish to be freed from just that. So that's what renunciation is. It's nothing more than wanting to overcome the root cause of all the afflictions, wanting to overcome ignorance. So when we say afflictions, the folds of afflictions, what is the fold of samsara? It's the fold of the affliction. So the afflictions caused samsara. So seeing that as faulty, seeing that as something I don't want to experience. So the wish, therefore, to overcome samsara. So really, to overcome samsara, overcome being controlled by the afflictions, overcome being controlled by ignorance, wishing to overcome that, that's what renunciation is all about. But of course, we don't need bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is different, but I can directly realize emptiness without having bodhicitta. But without renunciation, we cannot realize emptiness directly. It's impossible. So there's no way to realize emptiness directly without renunciation. So this is my understanding.